everybody built a website to talk to people, and nobody built a website to talk to AI. And now we have to start thinking about, how does our website look to AI?
Yes.
Is it? And it comes down to just three things.
Right now, it feels like the entire marketing world is obsessed with GEO. Everyone's trying to figure out how to get mentioned in ChatGPT, but in reality, a much bigger shift is happening. We are moving away from the chat interface and into what I call, and what many are calling, the Agentic Web. If you're lost on what that means or how to prepare for it, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to break down a brand new Google blog post that outlines the AI protocols that make things happen. Things like MCP and A2A and UCP and a bunch of other letters that really are going to be important for our future. This also marks the beginning of a new series that I'm calling Real People Using AI, where I'm going to be interviewing people from my community, the search bar, who are doing real things with real clients in terms of AI. Today, I'm sitting down with Liz Micik, SEO content strategist and AI transition consultant, to translate these developer protocols into actual marketing strategy. If you want to be ahead of the majority of the industry, then stick with us. A whole new discipline is unfolding right now, which means that no one in our industry is an expert yet. So this is your opportunity to build an advantage. Liz, thanks for doing this and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Marie. It's great to be here.
Yeah,
And
so
we're in a topic that we both just yak away at all day.
Yeah, so we were having a meeting in the search bar and we were talking about, how do we communicate all of the changes that are happening to people who aren't in the community? Because I really think that we're so focused on GEO, on trying to appear in ChatGPT, when that's kind of a distraction, right? Where do you see the web going?
Well, in order to answer that, I'm going to back up just a step. You know, when you talk about people talking about GEO, I always think about that old Jaws movie poster. You know, the one where the gal's swimming across on the top and he's coming up from the bottom. That's really what's happening with the web today. And that's something actually that's both new and very, very old. I've been at this for quite a while. For about 28 years, I've been helping people as they move things on their website. This is mostly where I have specialized, if you will. Domain migrations, platform migrations, clean out the attic, clean out the basement, straighten out your content strategy. So when I look at what's happening to the web today, I see us returning back to where we were in a lot of ways back in 2010, 2011, when things were just beginning to kick off for e-commerce. And we thought that was the biggest revolution that was coming.
Yeah.
That was very tiny compared to what we're going to see. But in a lot of ways, what we're seeing takes us right back to that beginning. So I think we're starting in a really good place with this series and with these conversations, and understanding what's the protocols, what are the actual items we need to listen to and items we need to know. And instead of trying to jump ahead to figure out, how do I get to be number one in GEO and how do I rank in GEO, or how do I optimize myself for it, you realize it's much more of a business decision and a business understanding that needs to be made, a strategy.
Google said in a blog post last year that every enterprise will rely on multiple agents. And at the time, we really didn't have a concept of what that means. And I still think we're still developing this concept of what does it mean? You know, will my website be replaced? I saw, who was it? Yoast de Valk, the creator of Yoast.
Yes.
WordPress.
Yes.
Put on X and on social media this weekend that he had switched his site from WordPress to a static Astro blog because now he can just do it all with AI, right? And that's one thing, being able to create things with AI. But I think what we're seeing this shift to is being able to actually do things with a business, and so what does that look like? Instead of you coming to my website to read stuff, are you actually engaging with tools on my website? I can see it. I can understand it for e-commerce, but I think that we're going to have a whole shift in the way that the web works for businesses that rely on transmitting information. So
It
What do you think?
starts with e-commerce. It
Yes.
started there already, but I think it's going to quickly spread throughout. And I think it's not just going to be enterprise. It's not just going to be this or that type of a website. It's going to be all sites that are affected by this, every single one of them. Part of what makes it so chaotic right now is that people don't understand what all of these acronyms and all of these two-letter terms, three-letter terms mean. One of the biggest, and I'm going to tee this up for you a little bit, Marie, because this is very much where I sit and where I'm working right now. There was a headline that was grabbed by Cloudflare, which is one of the leading providers on the web, just a few weeks ago, that said that now they are going to allow what's called a markdown version of your website
Yes.
to be
Yes.
consumed by agents. And it grabbed all of the headlines and it grabbed all of the attention. But we got to realize that we got to wrap our heads around what is it they're actually saying and what are they telling a business and what should a business owner, any business owner that happens to use this server level company, what should they worry about? What should they pay attention to? How much of it is in their control and how much is out of their control? Those are really the kind of questions and concerns that you should be asking now. And what they did when they said, now you can get a markdown version of your site, what does that mean to a business? It means that when somebody's coming from ChatGPT or from Claude and they've asked it a question and it's coming to your website, it's not consuming your website anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's getting its own version of it. Now, that's what they did. And Cloudflare has, I pulled up some stats here. They have approximately 22% of the entire market.
Wow.
All
Yeah.
websites
Yeah.
use that service. There are three others. You may have heard of these. AWS is another one. Google is another one. And Akamai is the third. So each one of these big providers, web providers, that's pretty much going to be 100% of the market there. That's not just e-commerce. That's not just this. It's every business has to make some pretty quick decisions about this and about how they're going to react to that. Is
Yeah.
what Cloudflare said is you can allow these agents to use your information to train on or not.
And
for
I don't
years-
understand. I think I saw, was it Frederick Deboo from Bing, I think, saying that it doesn't make sense to have a separate version in Markdown for because I mean, this is a whole other conversation that we could probably have a whole hour conversation about, because then you have to maintain two versions of your site. And, and we're supposed to be creating content and web pages for humans. So what happens?
Yes.
I think that Markdown is kind of like an intermediary. Like, we will have a layer, which is what we're going to talk about, these protocols that help agents communicate with the tools on our website and the functionality of our website. I don't know that having a set, like a page just in Markdown for bots is the way to go.
Well,
I don't know. What do you think?
I think he's already lost that war. And I'd say you've already lost that one, folks. And it comes back to and comes down to simple economics. It costs a lot of money, not for you, not for me necessarily. I mean, we're going to pay it ultimately in our subscription bill to Cloudflare or to Google or to whomever. But it costs a lot of money for Anthropic or OpenAI or Google itself to send that bot to read your content and read your human-made website. They have a hard time. They have a really hard time parsing this and pasting together that. But if you give them a markdown, that saves them up to 80% of the costs in
good
tokens.
Point. Good point.
So
I think it's still
that's big money.
developing. And I think that the things that we need to communicate to language models will happen through agent to agent and MCP and WebMCP, which we're not going to get into a whole lot in this episode. But the reality is that everything is changing, right? And when I first got into SEO, I could kind of learn from people like you who had been in for longer than me, and say, well, here's the standard of how things are done, and I'm going to learn how to do that. But now we're in this place where nobody knows Nobody knows what's coming. I don't even
You're
think
right.
Google knows how the
You're right.
agentic web is going to unfold. So
Absolutely.
what an interesting time to be a marketer, right? There's just so much to know.
So when you're in a time of chaos and you really don't know what's coming next, what can you do? A lot of companies, a lot of people I've talked to are just sort of saying, I'm just going to sit and wait. I'm going to let it sort itself out. I don't want to jump in too fast, too far. And then there's the other side of the coin that's saying, if I don't get into AI this week, I'm going to lose everything. There are an awful lot of those headlines going back and forth. But the reality is, no matter how it ultimately turns out, no matter how it ultimately works its way into the future, you're always going to have to keep up and keep doing something. And in this case, for every single business I can think of, that something is going to be taking a good hard look at yourself and a good hard look at your website. And as I say, uh, everybody built a website to talk to people, and nobody built a website to talk to AI. And now we have to start thinking about, how does our website look to AI?
Yes.
Is it, and it comes down to just three things. And what's old is new again. Can you be found? Can an agent find you? Once they can find you, can they understand you? And then if they find you and they understand you, can they trust you? So what you need to do is you need to make sure your website is clear. You need to make sure it's complete, and you need to make sure it's consistent. Your web presence across all of your sites is consistent.
Yes.
So we don't know whether an A to A or an A to UI is the correct way to go today. And you can explain what those are to people, but whether or not it is, it's sort of is my site ready for whatever comes next?
Exactly. So we're going to dig into this blog post that Google published, and they published it for developers. And so at first look, when you look at this blog post, a lot of people are going to be like, well, this is not for me. It's far too complicated. They're talking about using Google's agent development kit, which is really cool, but also like, I've struggled to use it even with the help of language models, coding. But what I saw when I read this blog post was there's a really nice description of the different protocols that we need to be aware of. So my goal in this talk is not to like give people a full tutorial on every single protocol and now you're going to be an expert. But I think that our goal, and this is what I'm telling my clients, is I think it's a little bit too early to be taking very much action right now. But I think that we need to be understanding what the protocols are and playing with them, practicing putting them into place. And then as the web develops into this agentic web, we're coming from a place of understanding and not being totally lost. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm not sure I agree with you totally, but I think probably the best way to explain what can be done right now, because I think some things must be done now.
Okay.
Will be to look at each of these protocols as you break them down. And then maybe we can say, here's how it practically affects you a little bit better.
Excellent. Yes. Yes. Okay. So this is the blog post. I'll put the link in the description for anybody who wants to read it yourself. And I think you should. I think that every marketer really should be familiarized with this. They're giving a scenario where they're using Google's agent development kit to create a restaurant agent. It's one that can go out and can buy supplies and can do a bunch of things agentically. I'm not, again, so worried about how the whole ADK is working together, but we want to look at each of these components. So the first one that they talk about is MCP, Model Context Protocol. And I think it's really funny if you ask a couple months ago, if I asked any of the language models what MCP was, none of them knew. Like they would make up some other acronym, and this is it's brand new stuff. But MCP seems to be what's going to be like the next way that agents communicate with the tools on our website. Liz, can you share your understanding of what MCP is?
Okay, now this is where it gets. Yeah, this is where everybody gets put on the spot a little bit. When I first heard MCP, I just thought, oh, that's another name for an API. It's another name for how you consume the data. And it's it is that and more. Now I understand it as an MCP is a wrapper around that pipe. And it's sort of, it's not just the tool, but it's the information itself. It's not getting everything through a fire hose. It's being more selective in what you are pulling back and what you are using. And Marie, I think you actually do a far better job than I do at explaining these things. But I think now the important thing I tell people to understand about model context protocols, MCPs, is that they are proliferating everywhere. Everybody's got their own, and everybody is trying to roll their own flavor. And it's really, what are you trying to connect to? Are you using it to connect to your analytics? Are you using it to connect to your payment systems? Are you using it to connect to something else? Each one of those is going to have a slightly different wrapper around and slightly different definition.
Yeah, that was good. I think where it gets a bit confusing is there's MCP and then there's WebMCP,
Now that's
which
what I
is
was
a
going to
separate
just ask
thing, right?
you.
And so I just brought up Google's documentation here on MCP, an open source standard for connecting AI applications to external systems. My understanding is that MCP is basically a way for AI to communicate with the tools that are available on my website or from my business. It doesn't necessarily need to be on your website. So one example would be Ahrefs has an MCP. And if you are using Claude or ChatGPT, or I love to use anti-gravity, and I use mostly Gemini and anti-gravity, you can connect to the MCP, which says, instead of me writing out the exact code to communicate, like from Ahrefs, if I want to get the backlinks for a site, there's a particular line of code that I need to write to say, find me 1,000 backlinks and in this order and that type of thing. With MCP, I can just say it in natural language. I can have a general idea of what I can get from the tool. And then MCP communicates my go get the backlinks to this website into the code that's needed to speak to the API. Does that make sense? Does that align with what you're,
I do the same thing with SEMrush.
Yes.
Everybody's got their own tech stack, if you will, and we all use our favorites. But what I wanted to ask you, Marie, could you elaborate a little bit on what you think? You have said in the search bar that you think that WebMCP is going to be the winner. That it's going to take over. Now, talk a little bit about that, because we've got Cloudflare that says, here are your options. You can go all, you can go nothing, or you can, depending on your subscription level, choose whether you want to turn on this or that or that or that. WebMCP is Google's option, Google's flavor of that, isn't it? Or is it more than that?
An open protocol. Now, I should say right here that for anybody who's watching this, this is like obviously a brand new area, and Liz and I are trying to figure it out. If we say something that is wrong, or you're like, no, Marie, it's not that way, like leave a comment, leave it respectfully, but like leave a comment to help the industry know where we're going. So I think there's a bit of confusion because again, WebMCP and MCP are kind of two separate things. And I think WebMCP kind of deserves its whole own episode to talk about.
Okay.
There's WebMCP can be for, like, the example that they give is, let's say you run a travel website and you're helping people book flights. And so, like right now, I would go to your website, I would fill out a form, and then I would get information back based on what I put in that form. WebMCP lets my agent do that, and my agent might be ChatGPT, Claude, an open source. Maybe it's an open claw situation, or it might be AI mode. I think that's where things are headed. But then there's another part of WebMCP that I think we haven't even really conceived of yet. And that's where, so I'm building a bunch of agents for SEO, and today I use them for my workflow. I haven't made, I'm like, am I going to make this a dashboard that maybe my community uses? Am I going to sell this as a SaaS tool? Well, probably what will eventually happen is it'll all be available via WebMCP. And so instead of going to my website and saying, how does Marie put this, content organizing agent to use, you'll basically tell your agent, go connect with Marie's agent. And WebMCP will do that. And so your agent is talking to my agent. I think it's very much like the way businesses work, that if I want to interact with a business, I'm not interacting with the owner of that business. I'm interacting with an agent that's operating on their behalf. And so, that's kind of where things are. I think at this point, we'll just kind of leave MCP there because there's a lot to be known. The Chrome 146 just came out, and you can there's a flag you can turn on to test WebMCP. My early tests, it's not anywhere on the web. It's coming, and I think it's something to play with. Maybe it's something that we need to do another episode on.
Well, I'm glad you teed that up the way you did, because honestly, when I went through and I'm looking at all of these other protocols and I see you're sharing on the screen agent to agent, it's really, MCP or WebMCP sounds like it's going to include and encapsulate a couple of these, agent to agent being the biggest. How does your agent then talk to my agent?
Exactly.
And
yes,
as a business,
A2A.
that's A2A. As a business owner, I need to decide what my agent can say to yours and what it will accept and what it will negotiate and what it won't negotiate. And those are all sort of, mind-blowing things right now. But in terms of practical terms of what you're doing on your web today, how do you do that? How do you start that? You start that by teaching your agent what your website and what your products and what your business is all about. You train it on your information. And, way back in the beginning, we always talked about garbage in, garbage out. AI agents or AI came on the scene, and we talked about hallucinations. A lot of that is actually born and buried in your website today.
Yeah. I think, and I've seen people say, oh, the AI overview is showing the wrong information for my business, but it's pulling it from somewhere on the web. Right. And the vast majority of the time, I think you can still kind of trick AI overviews into saying silly things. But for the vast majority of legitimate queries where people are going to ask Google for this information, it's actually not an AI problem when it hallucinates. It's just that your information's not correct on the web.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was doing a vanity search about what I'm known for, and you can always tell when somebody makes their list of the best SEOs to follow, which I'm honored to be on a lot of those lists. But you can tell when they've just completely used AI, because it'll say that I'm known for my expertise in Google penalties, which is something I haven't done a manual action in years. But it's still on my website. And so, it's my fault. It's pulling from my website. And so I think if you want to be known for certain things, being clear on your website is the way to go.
And there are so many horror stories that I could tell about that. Like I said, I've been at this for 28 years, and it's I'm encountering things that we haven't used in the web since 2015.
Wow.
But they're still out there on a website. They're still buried in your CMS. They're still out there on another site, like a G2 site, a review site, or a directory that you put something out on. So when we talk about, we got a lot of cleanup to do before we're ready to really show ourselves to agents.
Yeah.
Directly.
You made me think of Google's mission. Do you know what Google's mission statement is? I'm putting you on the spot.
Used to be something akin to, first do no harm, but that's not their Marie.
No, their mission statement is to organize the world's information and make it accessible and useful. And when you think about it, like I always think about when I used to go to the library when I was a kid, like, and you had to physically go there. You had to look up the card catalog to find whatever book you were trying to
Yeah.
find. You had to go down the aisle and read in alphabetical order and get that book and then open that book, maybe take it home and get information. And like today, whatever I want, it's right in front of me. It just amazes me. I think we take for granted just how good of a job Google does. I know that's not going to be popular with a lot of people. I think there's still a lot of room for improvement, but this is the next step. We're
Yes.
going to one day we're going to look back at, like, remember that time when we used to have to put our fingers on plastic keys and open up something called a search engine to find information? Like, it will just all be there when we need it. And we won't talk in this episode on brain computer interfaces, but that's where things go kind of wild. Before we get there, let's talk about
Yes.
A2A.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is from Google's blog post, that agent to agent standardizes how agents not only communicate with each other, but discover each other. And I'm going to pull over this. Let's see here. Share this tab instead. This is an example from Google on an agent card. And so when you have an agent on your website, every agent will have a card, which is just JSON, really simple language to understand. And the card advertises what the agent does. So when we first started talking about A2A, my clients were like, well, how would anybody know that we have an agent? And so I don't know. I think that this will be a part of how Google crawls the web. When they look at your website, they will probably also see that, oh, yes, you have these agents that do these things. And in this example, so every agent has a name, a description of what they can do. And this description is super important. This is not a very good example here, just a hello world agent, but this description really matters. And then where the agent can be found. Hopefully it's not localhost. That would be very difficult. That's if it's just sitting on your computer. And then this right here, the capabilities of the agent and what it can do, and the skills of the agent. Like, don't worry right now if you don't understand what those things are, but this is the basic understanding that we need, is to know that an agent, I should actually back up and explain what an agent is. So an agent is really just a prompt that has capabilities, that can use tools, can accomplish something. It doesn't necessarily have to work autonomously, like some agents will.
Right.
When you do code with Claude Code or Codex or whatever you're using, that's agentic. That's an agent doing code, like working autonomously for you. But really, agents are just AI prompts that have the ability to use tools for you. So I don't know, you have anything to add there, Liz, in terms of agents?
No, I think we kind of talked about it first and then gave the definite.
Yeah, I think we were in it. So we're going to skip over their use of agent to agent in ADK because we'll be here all day otherwise. And I think we have,
Yes.
again, lots of opportunity for future episodes. Let's talk just briefly about Universal Commerce Protocol, because my next episode is going to be with Andrea Lee from the Search Bar, who is going to be talking all about UCP. And this is huge. So, Liz, do you want to explain your understanding? I think you have a good understanding of what UCP is.
Well, just like I can't wait for your discussion with Andrea. She's got this nailed. She
Yes.
has this area down pat. But UCP is, like we've talked about with the MCPs. This is really how commerce will be done. This is the cart step, if you will, the cart that's coming. And it's actually not coming anymore. It is
It's here,
already
yeah.
here.
Yeah.
It is here. And a lot of people, in a lot of ways, again, a business owner does not need to pay attention to this, because if you are on Shopify, for example, if your store is on Shopify right now, they're already figuring all this out for you, and it will all be sort of seamless and there in the background. And it's how your agent will make the actual purchase. And unfortunately, you're not being given a whole lot of options to say, yeah, but I don't want exactly that yet. They're working out the basics, and then we'll get to the nuance above it. And that's nuanced step in between is right now it's, hey, we're putting on a new Shopify store that is a store of all stores. Do you want to be in there or do you not?
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you there or are you invisible?
And the wild thing with UCP is that I don't even think the average user of Google will understand what's happening other than, look,
They
I
won't.
can click buy now right from AI mode, right from Gemini. I noticed I was searching for
Yes.
some things. I was asking Gemini some things this weekend, and it started to give me product listings. Now, I didn't have UCP in there yet, maybe because I'm in Canada. I think it's just in the US for now. Although I'm not sure about that because I saw that Loblaws, which is a big grocery chain in Canada, is implementing UCP. But what people will see is right in AI mode, a button to say buy now.
Yep. Yep.
And then Google just announced last week that now you can add the ability to build a cart and you can add bundles. So, there's a lot of, that was one of the hindrances of UCP was like, it's rare that you want to buy just one thing, often you're wanting, but then when you think like, if I can make a cart, can I make a cart from multiple websites?
There you go. That's it. Now,
Yeah.
I brought up the Shopify example because I did, so many people have jumped immediately to they're going to do away with my store. They aren't going to need me at all on the web anymore. Google's going to go directly to the manufacturers and all the websites are, no, they're not going to disappear. We are not, our known e-commerce world is not going to instantly disappear in 6 months because of this protocol.
Mhm.
You're always going to have those options in those places. And Andrea's got the perfect setup. I don't want to give away her anything on what she's going to talk about, but there are bespoke stores versus commodity operations. And there's a huge world in between there. And what we're going to be doing is just sort of flipping the levers up and down on what I'm approaching this whole conversation today, Maria, is I'm a business owner. What do I need to
Yeah. 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 What do you think? I know we're overlapping with what I'm going to talk about next time, but what do
Yeah.
you think a business owner should do about UCP? Like clearly if you're a Shopify site, it's already there. You don't need to do anything. It's already set up. But what if you're not Shopify? Should you be trying to implement it? What do you think?
UCP, is directly affecting stores and e-commerce right now. But every single business is going to have to answer this same question. And that question is, what is my business? What is my
Yeah.
unique value to the world? And is it unique enough? So the phrasing I see out there a lot of times today is moat. Do you have a big enough moat around your business, around your castle, if you will? And there are going to be some businesses who say, yes, I am absolutely unique. I am me. I am not going anywhere. I've got a big moat and I don't need to participate in this. But the majority are going to be, fine, see you later. And then there are going to be some people who say, I do have a unique value over here, but I still want to allow for that a causeway so that you can come to my castle and you can see what I've got and you can deal with me here. And I think that's where the majority of us are going to live for the next 3 years.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a really interesting time for e-commerce because if you are known for your products and you're a place where people go to buy stuff, like this is going to be good. You're going to be able to
Yes.
sell more. People won't need to go to Amazon to find products that, like, I know if I go to Amazon and I have Amazon Prime, I can just click a button and it's at my house the next day. Whereas, a lot of brands are going to sell directly from their website. Well, not from their website, from the search results, but pulling from your inventory
Exactly.
but then I worry about there are a number of businesses that have really thrived and grown because of SEO. And really, there's not a lot that's special about these businesses. They don't have a moat. They have they had this understanding of how Google works, and maybe, you know, they had ways to find good links, and they had like really good SEOs to make them stand out. When I think what's going to make you successful in this next era is, number one, being known for your topics, number two, having a good price, and then number three, being known for your customer service and shipping. And my agent, when I want to buy something, is not going to give me a list of 20 places to buy from. It's going to be like, all right, Marie, I know that your priorities are shipping and quality, and then it will find the best result for me. And eventually my agent will go ahead and buy it, which we're going to talk about AP2 that's actually a good segue there.
Yeah. Well, but eventually is the key phrase there.
Yes.
And in the meantime, there are things you can do to make your moat stronger. There are things you can do to make your business more unique and sounding more unique to these agents. And they're not new things. And that's what I keep saying over and over again. It's the same thing we have always worked on. How clear is our content semantically? Can it be found by those agents? Can it be understood by those agents? And then can they trust you? That's what's my uniqueness? What is my value? That's where they come back to this. And I don't think they're going to come to you, Marie, and say, okay, I found one thing. They may come to you and say, okay, here are the top 3 or 4, or
Perhaps.
You said you wanted this, but this was also one of the what's the word I want? Requirements on your list
Yeah.
that I was looking for. And that one fails on this, but this one has this. And so if you are clear, if you are complete, if you are consistent, you have the table stakes to be in that game.
Yeah, I think UCP, I'm most excited for it in a world where we have glasses. And that's a whole other discussion again.
Not this.
I mean, AI glasses, right? That I'm in my garden and I'm like, oh no, there's a bug on my plant, and I tap my glasses and ask Gemini, and Gemini's like, oh, looks like you have aphids or whatever, right? And then if I'm like, can I get a product for that? Gemini is going to go ahead and find me the product. Like, it could say, well, here's 3 different options. Do you want to search? And I'm like, I just want spray and I want it as fast as I can get it. And then I saw an announcement today about Google making advancements in drone delivery, and so we're coming, I'm looking way into the future, but we are coming to a world where when I want something and I see it in the real world, I just ask my agent buys it and it appears on my doorstep or in my yard if it's drone delivery. So interesting times. I think for now, I've been telling my clients to be aware of UCP. I have one e-com client that is trying to implement it. My thought is that it's a developing protocol. Google said in their earnings call that it was a major focus for them in 2025, developing UCP. So it's not just a fly-by-night thing. Like it's going to be here for the long term. But I think that it will have some bugs and will take some working out.
I think you could say that about all of these.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Really mm-hmm.
So let's move on to the next then. And this is, okay, so if my agent is going to your e-commerce site to buy something, how does it negotiate the payment? And that's where there are multiple protocols here. So we're going to talk about Google's AP2, and then Stripe just announced MPP, which is the Model Payments Protocol, and ChatGPT has their own, Agentic Commerce. And so really what we're seeing here is just a standardized way for agents to be able to safely conduct transactions.
And I think this is the step that's going to trip us up for the longest.
Okay.
I think we may settle on the right way to do some of the others long before we settle on this, because you mentioned MPP, and within that There are even some, and they're bigger battles than you might know because they're off in a corner of the world you might never have heard of before, called cryptocurrency and the blockchain. And how are we going to pay? We're fighting over what is money,
Hmm.
well as everything
Yes.
else. They're fighting over, are you going to pay by fiat, which is a dollar? Are you going to pay by stable coin, which is a cryptocurrency? And if you're going to pay by stable coin, is it going to be USDC or USDT? And then they say, no, wait a minute. What if I want to pay by Cardano because I want to use its privacy coin Midnight? So, there's that whole realm that has to be straightened out first before somebody needs to panic about, oh my gosh, I don't have a bank account set up to handle all of those payments or those
Yeah.
processes or those protocols.
Yeah. Like right now, when I first read about AP2, Google talked about how it'll just work with standard payment protocols. Like you'll be able to use your Visa, your MasterCard, your whatever, like your credit cards. It'll work with Stripe, with PayPal, all of those common things. But what really excites me is this idea that we'll be able to do microtransactions. And I don't know a whole lot about the world of crypto, but I think that it's going to be very important.
And that's where they come in, is the micro payments, because the fees for all of those standard transactions are just too high. And who's going
Right,
to pay
right.
those fees? Is it going to be me, the business, the merchant? Time out here, folks. I don't like my Visa fees as it is. I'd
Yeah.
much rather use a stable coin where it's a fraction of that. But that's why it gets much more complicated, much faster. And I think that's why some of the other protocols, they've sort of backed off on it.
There's a clip from Demis Hassabis, CEO of Google DeepMind, which I'll try to put it into the video in editing afterwards. But he talks about how agents talking to agents will likely change the way that our economy works, and that my agent might not just pay your agent, but negotiate payment with your agent.
Yes.
Right?
So what is your scenario plan for what happens to the web?
Well, look, I think there's going to be a very interesting phase in the next few years on the web and the way we interact with websites and apps and so on. If everything becomes more agent based, then I think we're going to want our assistants and our agents to do a lot of the work and a lot of the mundane work that we currently do, right? Fill in forms, make payments, book tables, this kind of thing. So, I think that we're going to end up with probably a kind of economics model where agents talk to other agents and negotiate things between themselves and then give you back the results, right? And you'll have the service providers with agents as well that are offering services, and maybe there's some bidding and cost and things like that involved, and efficiency. And then I hope from the user perspective, you have this assistant that's super capable that you can, just like a brilliant a human assistant, personal assistant, and can take care of a lot of the mundane things for you. And I think if you follow that through, that does imply a lot of changes to the structure of the web and the way we currently use it.
It's a lot of middlemen.
Yeah, sure. But there'll be I think there'll be incredible other opportunities that will appear, economic and otherwise, based on this change. But I think it's going to be a big disruption.
So let's say I make these SEO agents and I make them available via WebMCP. And Liz, you're like, wow, that agent could actually make me a lot of money. Right now, I would offer like SaaS pricing. I would be like, here's your price for the month and you get so many credits, or, whatever. We figure that out. But in the agentic world, I might say my agent might talk to your agent, might make an agreement to figure out how to determine if my agent actually helped you make more money and pay me a percentage of that.
Okay.
And then we end up in a win-win scenario, right? Because the more my agents work to help you, the more money I make, the more money you make. And then this is how the economy explodes, because those who understand how agents work and how to get the most out of them will just have this ever-growing improvement in our bottom line.
Well, now here's the number 2 reason that I think that this is going to be the whole stumbling block that slows it way down. Because what you just said there, opens up a gigantic security hole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what happens with we know the scammers are out there, and they're getting worse, and they're getting more and more uh, transparent on the one side and harder to find on the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
So if what can my agent negotiate? How strong is my agent? How persuasive is your agent? We have to build in the security protocols,
Yeah.
all of that as well.
And you know what?
So
That kind of makes EAT or EEAT more important, right?
even more
Right?
important. That's
Because
why I
like
said
you need to know that the person whose agent you're
exactly.
interacting with is trustworthy, is like somebody who can, but even still, yeah, you're right. There's all sorts of security issues. I know Google just acquired or had a big partnership with Wiz, and there's a couple of other, I don't really pay a lot of attention to the security side of things, but it's definitely on their radar because this is where we're headed. And I really feel like this is similar. You went through this as people started buying stuff on the web. Like I remember people saying there's no way I would put my credit card on the web, like somebody's going to steal it, right? And that does happen. But today we all very freely put our credit card information on the web.
Exactly. So bringing it back home, what can I do as a business owner today? Make sure my information is consistent across the web. Make sure my security is strong across the web. Make sure that my reputation as a business. And that's why we're seeing, back to 2010 again, brand marketing and improving the SEO and the visibility of and improving the strength and importance of our brand marketing.
Yes.
As part of our marketing stack is so important. That you and I, we live in this future world and we can see these things, but they're not here yet. And I bet there are betting apps out there where they're already taking bets on how long it's going to take to get from here to there. And I'm saying we've got as a business, you've got 1 to 2 years to do all this housekeeping work we've talked about.
I think that's probably a good
to be
timeline.
done. There's a lot to be done. You got to start now.
Yeah, and I think like it starts with understanding these things, and then and then do we implement something for agent payments protocol right now? Probably not.
No. But you want to know what you do right now, and you're talking about agents protocol to buy something. One of the biggest stumbling blocks, we've got a tool right now that will do a lot of this. We've got a tool. We've had it for several years, but it's not used. It's only used like 28% of the time. It's called Schema, Structured Data. Okay. How many websites do not have structured data on their site? Not just maybe they have one page or maybe they have breadcrumbs, but if you're an e-commerce store, how many people do not have it? And why do they not have it? I've worked in a few different cases, a few different places where we wanted to implement Schema, but we couldn't because we could not put our price on our web page. And one of the important things is if it's going to be in your schema and your structured data, it has to also be on the visible web page. So this is a great explanation of an example of what we've got to do now. I didn't want to say that my product was $49 a month because it's actually customized according to each customer. So it could be $49 for you. It could be $59 for him. So I don't put it on my webpage, which means I can't put it in my schema. And since that's a required field in my schema, I can't use product.
You're making me think now about how personalization will come into play.
It absolutely will.
Right?
It does.
Like my private membership, I struggle with that. I like to offer, like if somebody's watching this and you're like, I can't afford to be a part of the search bar, I do occasionally, give people who are out of work a discount and stuff. But what if you could do that all agentically, that my agent would talk to your agent and go, well, here's a fair price for both of us.
Well, Schema is our tool right now. Structured data is our tool right now to make it clear for the agents. This is what disambiguate, make everything as clear and complete as possible. But there's been recent discussions even in LinkedIn. Rand Fiskin put the question out there, and some other people recently answered with, is Schema going to be the basis for everything in the future? And somebody else said, well, you know what? No, because this was just in the HTML on the page and the agent was able to find it. So I suspect we will have another A2 acronym popping up here
Maybe,
soon. And there may be some shifts in the language and the things that we can do. And these agents will get to the point where, and they will get to the place where they are able to take a look at your product description and the phrase that you put in that makes your water bottle so much more unique to somebody else's, that will be understood, or you will be able to make that understandable to an agent.
Yeah. I'm laughing because, and I don't want to go too far down this road.
No.
I don't know how much you know
No.
about my battle with Schema, with trying to understand Schema throughout the years. And I go back and forth. I'm like, I see the purpose. If you have an e-commerce website, it's mandatory, but I think a lot of what people attribute to Schema is just text on the page. And I here's my belief. I believe that Schema was given to us so that we could learn how to understand the information on the web, and one day we won't need it. But I think we're not at that one day now. So anyways, that's another thing that I could talk for hours on.
I think right now it's actually becoming the most important thing you could have right now, because the job of Schema is to what they call disambiguate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm John Smith and I want to sell you this water bottle, but which John Smith are you? EEAT. Who are you? What are you? What's your expertise? Just knowing, are you John Smith, the e-commerce store owner? But there's also a John Smith who's a Falcon trainer, and there's a John Smith who is, according to his socials, quite a fun guy. Which one is that? It could be all the same person.
I had a fascinating conversation with Gemini about Schema, and I asked Gemini to argue against itself on the case for Schema. And then at the end, it said something that really actually made me think that, because I was like, Gemini, if I ask ChatGPT about me, Marie Haynes, it doesn't need to grab the Schema from my website. It grabs from its knowledge. It grabs from RAG. It grabs whatever. And then Gemini was like, well, but the Schema says this is exactly what you need to know, as opposed to the language model having to read everything and decipher what it needs to know. So I do think there's definite reason for Schema. I think a lot of the Schema that we use, I don't think that it gives you a ranking benefit in a lot of cases, but I think that it's a really important layer for machines to understand. Yeah.
There's the distinction.
Final questions to finish up. The agent to user interface protocol, I think we haven't really seen this yet. My understanding is that it's essentially Google can whip up a UI. And we saw a paper where Google talked about potentially doing this and I think in the paper it was if you had really, really bad user experience on your site, then Google might, or confusing user experience, Google might create a whole new web page for you. I don't know. I think that we are going to come to a place where agents can just produce whole web pages on the fly. Interesting, right?
Well, interesting, and something to be avoided at all costs. As a business owner, that's me absolutely losing my identity, if you will. But I see this maybe going in a different direction as well. I can see this as sort of the evolution of your website chatbot.
Okay. Yeah.
Take this, use this. This is how the agent talks to a human. So instead of being able to just give you, here are 3 options, when you, from your array, in your little chat box down at the bottom, it can actually show you, a chart of why this one is better than that or something.
Right,
It
right.
can
Okay.
actually do things like that. I think that's where it will wind up.
I
People
think
are,
we were talking about this in the search bar, but Google has a labs experiment called Google Disco, and it'll allow you to create an app
yes,
out of tabs that you have open. And I'll show a clip of it when we make this video live. And I think that might be part of the agent to UI, so that my agent wouldn't just be talking to your website, but maybe your website is part of a collection of websites that I'm interested in. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm doing research on, something and you're just one of those. And then my agent spins up a tool with an interface that I can converse with all of those websites. But that's theoretical at this point. Like, we don't really know.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't want to spend too much time on agent to user interface.
Yeah.
And then the last one is similar, which I don't know very much about, but agent user interaction protocol. And so my understanding here is that it, I think I highlighted something. Oh, maybe not. It sort of, the way that we get information and communicate with tools and websites is so one-sided. Like, we get information all in one chunk, but when we talk with AI, we might want to interrupt that conversation, and it'll be back and forth in a different way. Let's see here. It acts as middleware that translates raw framework events into a standardized SSE stream. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that, or do you think we should leave that one for another day?
Thoughts on that from a code standpoint? No, I don't know what an SSE stream is or anything else, but I think this is what I just saw demoed by, there's a gentleman a YouTube creator named Matt Wolf, and he does a weekly update on what's the news in AI. I've been following him for a couple of years. Shout out to Matt. He
awesome.
just did this in one of his podcasts where you can actually, as you're conversing with your agent, ask them to show me an interactive map of what happens when the temperatures rise or something like that. It's another way of getting very detailed and complex information out there, and it's available now. It's been built in, again, I think it's a labs environment. Correct me, because I'm sure I'm probably wrong, folks, but it's a way of bringing information like that to life. And we have someone in the search bar who does the Maslow's hierarchy of needs as his test a lot. It would show you that in a very interactive way.
Agent to user interface. I don't know. I think I have to learn more there before we can
Oh, you
teach on
see,
that.
I may be totally off on my, what that an acronym stands for, but I know that's coming.
It's coming. Lots of changes coming. So I want to summarize what we learned, and then I have 3 rapid fire questions for you,
Okay.
Liz. So MCP, this is the end of Google's blog post, connects agents to tools. Agent to agent connects agents to other agents. UCP standardizes commerce. AP2 handles payment authorization. A2 UI defines what to render. That makes sense. And then AGUI defines how to stream it. So these are the protocols that we need to be aware of. I think some of them we can start playing with. I think if you're e-commerce, you pretty much have to be looking at UCP because it's the way that things are headed. And then the rest of them, I personally think that it's enough right now to just know that they exist. And I think these protocols will be changing so much that if you tried to implement something right now, it would be outdated by the time it's standard use.
Yes, I'd agree 100%. But the one thing you have to do right now is make a decision on how you want to interact with these. Where do you want to land? Do you want to deny them? Do you want to allow them? Do you want to land somewhere in the middle? And then start doing your housekeeping, your cleanup to take you to that point. That's what we need to do now.
Okay, so Liz, I have 3 rapid fire questions for you that I would love to have your opinion on. Number 1, if you speak to the people who are watching this and completely overwhelmed and don't know where to go with AI, where to learn about AI, what would you recommend for them to do?
Well, you didn't tee it up, but I'm going to say it anyway. I would suggest that people check out the search bar. Start
Amazing.
with the newsletter. Start with, whatever little pieces of getting your news that you can. But consider joining us because none of us are experts. And it's not like Marie is teaching a class or anything. We're all learning from each other and expanding our knowledge together.
Thank you. I didn't ask Liz to say that. I
All
was
right,
going to
all right.
end with that.
So you could also say find a community.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're wondering what the search bar is, you can go to community.mariehaynes.com. There's a free area where myself and others put in all of the stuff that's happening in terms of search and AI that is important to know. And then the paid area is just such a great group of people that are learning how to navigate such an AI word, right? I swear ChatGPT didn't write this, but learning how to navigate this new future that we're walking towards. So thank you, Liz. And Liz, you're relatively new to to communicating or to being a part of the community, and I really appreciate your contributions. There's just such a bunch of great people in there. Thank you. Okay, number 2, what is one non-work thing that you've done with AI?
Well, it's a necessary thing that everybody has to do. I just recently went through and redid my entire financial planning and all of the things associated with that. Given that, one of these days I may just run into a Terminator type coworker. So I got everything in order. So my family won't ever have to worry about it if the doomsayers are right and we're all going to be wiped out by AI in 2 years.
What did you use for that? Did you use Claude, ChatGPT?
I did. I use Claude mostly.
Claude, yeah.
Actually, it's too simple today just to sort of go back and forth.
Yeah. Very interesting what you can do. And then my third question is whether you have any books that you recommend. I love reading books. I think our brains are getting ruined by short-term stuff that we can get on social media, right? And there's something about sitting down with a good resource. But what do you think?
Well, I'm very glad you said it that way. And I'm going to climb up on my soapbox here for just a little minute. In terms of our topic and what we've talked about here today, things are moving just way too fast for any book or anything to actually be able to capture it. But I think one of the most important things you can do is read a book to a child. Read a book to a child. Read a book with a child. Let a child see you reading books. Because when you get right down to it, reading, writing, and arithmetic, these are the 3 skills that kids have got to learn in an analog way. Mm-hmm. They do so much more for turning on your brain. Learn how to add that math problem up yourself before you use a calculator. Don't ask ChatGPT to write your essay. Do it yourself and read a story. So if you start young, you got kids, you got grandkids, read to a child.
Love it. I love it. So we're only just scratching the surface on what we need to know in terms of these protocols as AI is changing the way that the web works. I really encourage you to join the community, community.mariehaynes.com. And Liz, thank you so much for joining us as my first guest in this series. Our next guest, as we said, is going to be Andrea Lee. We're going to talk about Universal Commerce Protocol in great detail. Liz, if people want to contact you, are you taking clients? What kind of work are you doing?
Sure, I will. I'm always open to talking to people, and I'm really glad that we were able to do this in such a short time today. Normally it's a lot longer. But if you want to get in touch with me, there are 2 ways. You can just go to my website, lizmicik.com, or reach out to me in email at lizmicik@gmail.com. Super simple.
Amazing. I'll put those links in the description. And thank you everybody for watching, and I wish you the best of luck with everything.